I want to show you 4 tricks for better sounding reverbs in your mixes. Trick number 1, de-ess your reverbs before, especially, and sometimes even after. Trick number 2, try compressing your reverbs. I like to use MV2 by Waves. Try compressing the reverbs to get more sustain and more harmonics out of the reverb without simply just bringing up the decay. Tip number 3, which you might have seen in my vocal processing video part 2, sidechain your reverbs so they get out of the way of your vocal and then bloom afterwards. And tip number 4, don't be afraid to filter or EQ your reverbs after the reverb plugin. What is up, my friend? Jacob here with another video to help you record better, mix better, and work better. Today I want to bring you 4 main tips to make your reverbs sound better in the context of your mixing. But first, before we dive into this, I want to tell you about something very, very special. If you did not pick it up already, I want you to go grab my free PDF gear guide, Beginners in Audio, What to Buy and How Much It Costs. This PDF gear guide, if you're just getting started in audio, is going to give you a bunch of different things you're going to need to buy to build your studio, how much it's going to cost. I give you a lot of different options at different price points, so go check that out. Go to www.mixwithjacob.com/gear guide. Pick that up. Again, it's absolutely free. Let's jump into the video. So I'm going to show you my first tip for cool sounding reverbs, and that is de-essing your reverb before and after if necessary. I have this track here called You're It by Sarah Diamond. It was released not that long ago. I'll put a link down in the description so you can go check that out. This is kind of what the rough mix sounds like now. I only did the tracking for this. I didn't mix this record, but this is the rough mix that I gave Sarah. And I've taken off all the reverbs so you could hear kind of the raw vocal, the raw rough mix. When you're in the room, I just want you to stay. I don't want no one to touch me there. But when I look at you, ooh, I get the tingles right down to my toes, and it's all 'cause of you, baby. So that section, the little tinkle down to my toes part, a lot of S's, right? A lot of sibilances. Ooh, I get the tingles right down to my toes, and it's all 'cause of you, baby. So right now there's no reverb, right? It's not bothersome. I have a little bit of de-essing on the vocal bus. Let's say we add a reverb, and in this case, we want to use maybe like a bright, long hall reverb. Let me create a stereo auxiliary track. Let's call this Verbskis. And we're going to use, let's say, I don't know, what's bright that could really bring out the sibilance? Maybe the R verb. And let's make a send. Send this to the mix bus. Let's make a send to that track now. Verbskis. Make a send. Let's hear that again. So you see, when she's singing those S's, you get this kind of bloom of sibilance in the reverb, which you might not necessarily want, and you want to try and avoid that in general in a mix. Too much sibilance in a song, right? So I'm going to show you how I de-ess before the reverb and even after. So I just moved my reverb down 1 insert here, and all I'm going to do is grab a simple de-esser. This is more just to show you the result. I think it's pretty straightforward as far as the technique goes, but just to show you the kind of result that it gives you before and after. I like to use the Waves de-esser. I think it's probably the best de-esser out there. I also like to use sibilance sometimes, which is on the vocal track. This is a rough mix I did a while ago, so I was maybe into the sibilance plugin before. In this case, I'm going to use the de-esser from Waves, the stock one. Now I'm going to play back this track without the instrumental, just to hear really the essence of the lead vocal. And if you want to really dive in a little deeper, make the send pre-fader and mute the lead vocal. So you see that sibilance is kind of cutting through. I'm going to go with a split band, and I'm only going to grab a frequency range here. So I'm kind of like filtering a little bit in that DS. I'm going to go grab like a little higher. It seems like her S's are maybe sitting around 6K, somewhere in there. And I find the best results I've got is when you actually push that de-essing really hard. See how smooth that is now? Let's bypass it. See, not pleasant, right? Let's put it back in. Nice. So that's what I like. Okay, great. Now you can de-ess after the reverb if there's still a bit of sibilance coming through, but it's way less effective than de-essing before. See how it's barely doing anything because there's so much noise, and the reverb is now pretty smoothed out because of what we did before. So I think we're good with that. So that's tip number 1. Now let me show you tip number 2, compressing your reverbs to get more tail without necessarily adding more decay to the actual reverb. What I like about compressing a reverb, especially with the plugin I'm about to show you, is it gives you a little bit of harmonic content too because of the nature of how the compressor works. Let me grab that same reverb, the Reverb, because it's got tons of texture, great sounding reverb. I'll unmute the lead vocal. I'll set this back to post fader and unmute the lead. I'll leave the track muted just so we can hear really the detail. Let me put like a reasonable amount of reverb, not too much. There you go, that's nice. It's a lot of reverb, but it's reasonable. So, what I like to use in my reverb compression, but you could use any plugin you want, really doesn't matter. What's important is compressing that reverb to get more sustained and more harmonic. Basically, you're taking what's quiet about the reverb and what's loud about the reverb, and you're kind of shrinking that dynamic range, so all the details come out a little bit better. I like to use the Waves MV2 for this. Basically, I bring the high level down and the low level up quite a bit, and you're gonna see already, we'll trim the output as well because it's gonna get quite loud. Let's bring the output down like -10, and then we'll just kind of slide it back up if we need more. Let's go like -15. What I like is this low end, so it's bringing out a lot of that low end stuff. Nice. Let's see if the levels are about the same when I bypass it. A little bit louder. Bring it down. It's important to kind of gain and level match when you're trying out these things because you could get the impression that it's better just because it's a little bit louder, so that's why I'm kind of doing this. So you see, level-wise, we're actually pretty much the same. Here's bypass. It's maybe a dB quieter. But you hear, as soon as I turn it on, the reverb has so much more life and excitement. And within the context of the track, let me send a little bit more reverb into it. Bypass. Turn it back up. Right? So much more lush and so much more full sounding. So that's why you should consider compressing your reverbs, especially with the MV2 plugin. Just make sure to gain match to make sure that you're not deceiving yourself into thinking it's better just because it's louder. Now, tip number 3, which I spoke about in my vocal processing chain part 2 video, is sidechaining your reverbs, especially longer reverbs. If you're using a short reverb, like an ambient verb just to create like this little space, maybe it's less necessary, but longer reverbs like plates and halls and chambers, I like using sidechain with my vocal onto the reverb so that the reverb ducks when the singer is singing and it comes back and blooms afterwards when the singer is not singing. Let me give you an example. I'll use this same reverb I have now with the Reverb and the MV2. Let me mute the track. Now, you can see I already have a sidechain bus created, which is bus 16, because I'm using the track spacer to sidechain the vocal to the track to make kind of space because I'm only mixing to a stereo instrumental. I talk a little bit about this plugin in my video for mixing 2-track vocals to an instrumental, so go check that out. I'll put it maybe in the corner here, or is it here? Maybe there? I'm not sure. So I'm going to use that same sidechain bus and put a R comp on the reverb track, R compressor, right? Let's put the key input, which in this case is bus 16, which is an internal bus of Pro Tools. And now, let me mute the reverb for a sec. And let me get a little bit of a visual compression setting that looks good. I usually find compressing -3 to -6 dB when the vocal's singing really kind of does the job. Too much, the reverb disappears completely. Not enough, it's not giving you the desired effect. So I like to do a very slow release. Let's start at like 2500 and a fairly fast attack. And let's go opto smooth, because that's probably the GOAT setting of this plugin. Let's compress a little bit less. And let's hear that. Let's see how that sounds.
I get the feeling that nobody knows unless I let them get it. Oh, I wanna hold you.
I think we can probably go a little harder.
Let me
mute the backs.
Love you so hard that it hurts, then we'll do it again. Oh,
Little faster on the release, maybe. There you go.
can't overstay what it's like. Baby, no, I wanna lay with you every night.
Nice. So you can see it's kind of creating this natural depth between the vocal and the reverb, where when she's singing, the vocal's really in your face. When she's not singing, there's kind of this nice space behind it. Let's listen to it in the context with the actual instrumental.
I get the tingles like down to my toes, and it's all 'cause of you, baby. I get the feeling that nobody knows unless I let them get it.
Maybe we're compressing a little hard. Let me compress a little less.
Tease you and please you until we are ready. Love you so hard that it hurts, then we'll do it again.
Bring the gain up a little bit. With the compression, you kind of lose a little bit of volume on the verb.
Can't overstay what
Nice.
it's like.
Nice, see? So nice, natural sounding reverb without getting in the way of the vocal. Now, tip number 4. Don't be afraid to EQ or filter your reverbs after the plugin. And even most reverbs have EQ and filters built into the plugin. For example, the R verb. I find naturally this R verb, the default preset of R verb, I find it kind of bright, which is nice in certain things, but let's say you want it to be a little bit darker. Let's dial in a little bit of a reverb here. I like the time of it. Now, you'll see here there's an EQ module on the right side, and a lot of reverbs have either dampening, which is EQ going into the reverb, and then EQ post reverb. And you can see it's already filtered quite heavily. I could filter it even more and make it even darker. Let me do the pre-fader send, so we hear just the reverb. Right, and let me open it up. Right, too bright. I like generally reverbs that are darker, so I like to EQ my reverbs after. And also using long kind of lush reverbs, you want to EQ them so they fit well within the track. Let's change our reverb that we have now. Let's take off all the stuff we did. And let's put a EMT 140, because I love that reverb. And I think for this song, it will suit the track very well. Nice long kind of darker plate, right? Let me take the pre-fader send off. Quite loud. Let me turn it down a bit. Now, in context of the track, with the back vocals. Sounds great, right? It's maybe a little bit bright on the decay. So within the actual plugin module, I have an EQ that I could turn on, right? That I could then set a frequency. Let's go around 10K-ish, somewhere in there. And I could dip down. See how nice that is with like no top end? It's so nice with just like a low mid kind of reverb. And I can boost it after. Too bright. Or another thing you could do, if the reverb itself doesn't have an EQ module, like for example, the little plate from Sound Toys doesn't have an EQ, it has just a filter cutoff. Just put an EQ right after and EQ it however you want. I find this reverb a little bright. I don't need this extra low end. I really don't need that stuff. So I filter off a little bit. And let's do a little bit of a scoop here around 4K. And I'll use this kind of auto feature so that the gain doesn't actually change. Now, let's dip down a little bit. A little less of the verb. Nice, right? Nice and lush, not too long, not too bright, doesn't take up too much space in the mix. Let me mute the EQ. Bypass, I should say. So you can see this auto gain feature is actually adding too much, so let's take it off and just gain up a little bit. A little bit more on the verb. You can see even some of that sibilance is coming through. So when I do this filter, you can see it gets a little bit more lush. It kind of fits within the context of the song a little bit better. And that's why you should not be afraid to EQ your reverbs after the reverb plugin. Whether it's within the module itself of the plugin, if there's filters or EQs, go for it. Otherwise, just put a EQ plugin right after. There's no reason you should treat your reverbs any differently than an individual track in your mix. If you need more sustain out of a kick drum, you compress it. If you need more attack out of something, you compress it. If you need more top end on something, you EQ it, right? Why not do the same with your reverbs? There's no rule that says you can't, so try it out. So that's it for my 4 tricks for better sounding reverbs. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. What are your reverb secret tricks and hacks? Are you compressing? Are you EQing? Are you modulating? Let us know in the comments. I'm always looking for new techniques. Also, don't forget to pick up that free PDF gear guide if you didn't already. www.mixwithjacob.com/gear guide. Again, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week. Peace. Tip number 2. Change this chair because it's very squeaky.